We're going to move into Marquette County, or talk about Marquette County. We've got Commissioner Bill Nordin with us, who is not running for re-election. The redistricting debacle, which sadly I was a part of, and yes, I was one of the people that voted for this horrible system of moving into 6 commissioners. You should have seen what they were trying to force down our throats. I mean, this is actually good compared to what they were going to do to us folks. So I guess I'm going to just turn it over to Mr. Nordin, who will talk about some of the issues going on in Marquette County and how this affects maybe the upcoming election. So thanks for coming in this morning.
Good morning, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here. So I don't know what you wanted to discuss in general.
I'm going to let you kind of guide the conversations.
Okay. Well, I think that people need to know that the politics in Marquette County has always been run by the same people and the same organizations, and certainly they need to be aware of who's pulling what strings. And I think that a big part of that was the redistricting, as you talked about, and the redistricting was from 9 districts down to 6. And I don't blame you one bit, because it was going to be 5, right?
It was going to be 5, yeah.
And the people that decided that were the prosecutor, Gary Walker, the treasurer,
yeah,
the county clerk, and then the chair of what?
The chair of the Democrat Party, Ben Bonsack, was actually he and I were actually trying to work together to eliminate. Gary basically had a block of votes between Gary Walker and Connie Branham and Ann Giroux. They walked in with 3 votes. When we first met, we talked about reducing the number from 9 to 7. Mr. Bonsack was opposed to any change at all. He would actually have liked to see maybe even more commissioners versus less. But when we had our second meeting, they brought it down just to 5. The 3 of them only came in with plans for 5 commissioners. So, you know, you can't tell me that that was not a violation of the Open Meetings Act, but it was one hell of a coincidence. But they came in and they were going to force a plan, and they had the plan. They had the votes to force a plan on us for 5 commissioners. But God bless him, the chair of the Democrat Party knew that was a horrible idea, and the 2 of us fought against it. And the only reason we didn't get that plan is because, again, as chair of the Democrat Party, I wouldn't say that they caved in or acquiesced to him, but they knew that it was going to look very bad if the Republican and the Democrat chair, with the 2 people working united, trying to save the county, when the other 3 were trying to basically kill the commission. So we ended up with he had drawn a plan up for 8, which I proposed, and he seconded. Not one of those people voted for. And I had plans for 7 that didn't even get a vote, and the plan for 6 that we ended up with did end up getting passed. You know, with 7, it would have taken a majority of 4. With 6, it still takes a majority of 4, but I think it's way too small. But I was 1 vote out of 5. The Democrat chair was the other 1 out of 5. Gary Walker, Connie Branham, and Ann Giroux were a block of votes that were united, and basically Gary had 3 votes.
And I think the whole underlying issue here is the retire-rehire program, and that's what brought me back to being a county commissioner. You know, I saw the retire-rehire program as a manipulation of the county resources of the taxpayer. I think it was wrong. And I look at Gary Walker as the poster child for that. I mean, he had been a county or a prosecutor for a long time and had increased his wages over that time. But in addition to that, then he started collecting his retirement. I mean, it was a terrible thing. I mean, he was making $118,000 a year, one of the highest paid prosecutors in the state of Michigan, certainly the highest in the UP. And in addition to that, 8 years ago, I think it was, he started collecting his retirement. His retirement is $100,000 a year, or very close to it, for the rest of his life. So what he started doing 8 years ago was collecting $100,000 on top of the $118,000. So the people of the taxpayers of Marquette County were paying him $218,000 a year. Now, he says part of that came through the retirement program, but we, the taxpayers, fund the retirement program.
Right.
So that's the problem. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's where I came back and ran for county commissioner, because I thought it was perverse. I thought it was obscene that this was happening. And I feel that we did make some good changes in the last 2 years. We've changed some administrative people, and I think we've changed the direction of Marquette County. But people should realize that there are a few people that run and pull the strings of the politics in Marquette County. And the person that does that more than anyone is Gary Walker. And even though he's now resigned or not running again for prosecutor, he still puts his people in a position, and he's a very intelligent guy in the way he manipulates Marquette County politics.
Yeah, and of course he, although a lot of people were happy that, hey, you worked hard, you were 38 years, or great, now we're going to start a new day. It's not a new day yet, because he's running for supervisor in Chockley Township, and again, different position, but he's still going to be involved, and I think a lot of us still believe he's going to be running although he might not be the face of the party, he is definitely the strategist for the party.
Well, I think he still pulls the strings. I think that's right. And I think that's what happened with redistricting, and he was pretty open about that he wanted to get rid of some of the commissioners that had challenged the retire-rehire, which, like myself. So when he did the redistricting, he went from 9 to 6, and yes, I know you were on that committee, but like you said, the 3 came in with their block votes, and they already had their minds made up before it even started. So when they came in, they redistricted these county commissioner districts from 9 to 3, and they put people together so they had to run against each other. One was myself and Debbie Pello and Chuck Bergdahl, so I decided not to run because they were trying to eliminate 2 of the 3, which obviously it's going to happen.
Right.
Now, the one thing that was interesting was that they formed a district that had no incumbent county commissioner, which was Chockley. And the big joke was everyone thought was, what, is Gary going to run for county commissioner now? And to everyone's surprise, it was very close to that because what he did was he talked to a very close friend of his, Greg Sepinen, who had been the supervisor at Chockley. And Greg Sepinen pulled out or decided not to run again for supervisor and is now running for that empty county commissioner slot that was kind of created by Gary Walker and the block voting there. And now Gary Walker is running for Greg Sepinen's spot as supervisor at Chockley. I mean, the whole thing is so manipulative, but you have to look at it and think that this guy really has a strategic plan. He really had a strategic plan for the county, and it continues on. I mean, he puts his people in where he wants them, so he has some control of the political machine. I mean, he put in Matt Wiese, who was certainly his protege, and I'm nothing against Matt Wiese, but I'm just saying that Gary puts his people into these positions. The other one is certainly the judgeship, and I think he's made it pretty clear that he's had two of the 5 judges in Marquette County had worked for Gary at one point. He'd certainly like to make it 3. And that's what we have now is with Cheryl Hill, which Cheryl Hill, interestingly enough, was the civil counsel for the County Board of Commissioners, and we removed her earlier in the year, and now she is running for probate judge, and it makes you wonder, well, where does that experience come from? And the other person running is George Hyde, who has all the experience for the last 10 or 15 years, which would be the natural selection. But, you have this political machine. So what Gary Walker brings to the table is that he gets all the endorsements for the candidates he wants. He wants Cheryl Hill in there because Cheryl Hill was certainly his protege and his selection, and he gets the endorsements for that. But it makes me wonder if the people realize that. Do the people realize it, or do the people just not care? And I always thought judgeships were something that were so special that it was devoid of this type of politics, but apparently not.
No, and I think you're right that it's not just I don't think it's that. I mean, it's partially that people don't care. There are people who just don't care, and there's a lot of people who just don't know. I mean, a lot of this stuff, is not known by people unless they're actually involved in it, and it's not like it's easily accessible information either. So they've done a very good job at not only manipulating the system, but to keep the information of how it's being manipulated out of the common conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And back to the redistricting, I mean, what Gary wanted to do was eliminate the commissioners that were against him and against the retire and rehire program. Not him in particular, but his involvement in the retire rehire program, really. It wasn't anything personal. It was something about fundamentally wrong with that.
Yeah, bad math, simply.
It's bad. I mean, the county, the county residents are paying for this, and it's a terrible, terrible thing, and he didn't like that. So he wanted to manipulate the system, so he had to write people in. And sure, now he's trying to get Greg Sepinen in and eliminate some of the other commissioners, and he seems to be very successful at that.
Yeah, and so as the hour is winding down and we've hit that, what other issues? I mean, I wanted you to kind of maybe hit some of what you thought were the importance, because you've really been in the midst of this battle. So what are some of the other issues that people should be thinking about and aware of?
Well, I think people should understand the issues and not put up with the manipulation of our government and manipulation of people, the manipulation of what the taxpayers have to pay for. It's not fair and it's not right. So, okay, I'm sorry, I had somebody else talking in my ear, so keep on going. No, I think that people need to be aware of what's going on, and I think that people need to stand up and say, we don't like it when people get paid twice on the tax dime. We don't like that. And we don't like that now a few select people are going to benefit from that sort of thing. And you have people that are manipulating the system because they have the power to do it, and no one stands up and tells them no. And I think it's time people should stand up and vote accordingly and say this isn't right. And it's bad enough that we hear these things in Chicago and you hear these things in Detroit and everywhere else. But you know what? It shouldn't happen in Marquette, Michigan. It should not happen in our county.
Absolutely, and I think this is probably the best opportunity to really make a notable change, and the voice of the people can say, hey, this is really enough of this. Retiree hire wasn't bad enough. It wasn't bad enough that we've got, people who for years and years have been, they got decades. I just saw numbers that we got people on the commission who are going to be receiving pensions because they've been serving so long. And I realize that, it's not a 4-hour-a-month job. If you're doing your homework like you do, and it probably is a 4-hour-a-month job for at least one of our commissioners, who I won't name at the moment. But if you're doing this job, you're supposed to be doing this because you want to help and you want to make a difference, not because of what you can get out of it. And we've got commissioners who are clearly there because of what they can get out of it. We're paying a pension for people who shouldn't even be getting health care benefits. They're working part-time. We got part-time workers who aren't getting the health benefits that these commissioners are getting. It's just crazy. So I think we've got a great opportunity to stand up and say, hey, enough is enough. Let's make a change and get back to some common sense here.
I think you're right, and you know how I feel about that. I didn't think that commissioners should get health care. It's a part-time job. It's no one's full-time job. It does take a lot of time, but there's so many people in this county that do not have health care that county commissioners should not have health care for being county commissioners. It's not a full-time job. It really isn't. We all have other jobs. I have a full-time job in addition, so obviously being a county commissioner is not a full-time job. And I think it's not right when so many people are without in this county that goes on. But it's part of the way the system works here and the way the same people have made the decisions. And really, I get back to the point that there's a few people making or pulling the political strings in Marquette County, and the county commissioners really don't stand up to them. They never stood up to retiree hire. When we challenged the retiree hire, Gary Walker already had his people in place. He had Cheryl Hill, who was the civil counsel, came back and really defended retiree hire. And we certainly then reacted by saying, okay, we want our independent civil counsel. So what do? We remove Cheryl Hill. We find an independent civil counsel so we don't have to have someone through the prosecutor's office. And Gary Walker makes Cheryl Hill the chief assistant prosecuting attorney. Well, how did that happen? Obviously, these are political rewards, and that's the way the system works. And I guess I'm pointing out the obvious to some people, and that's the way it works.
It's not obvious to us. There are a lot of people who really don't know that this has been going on.
It's terrible, and I understand the politics, and people tell me that I'm naive, and this is what happens in politics, and it probably does, but I don't like it happening to Marquette. I look at Marquette as a place that should be simple. I look at it like Mayberry, and that's what I want it to be. And I realize we have a lot of daunting challenges, but still, our prosecuting attorney does not face the same things as a prosecuting attorney in Detroit, in Wayne County, in Oakland County, or in Flint. I understand it's a tough job and everything else, but the manipulation that's gone on is crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that therein lies the problem of anybody being in power too long. The way these systems were set up, as people, who pay attention know, people who are running and making the decisions for the cities and the counties and the states are people who supposedly had a good life and were successful, and now we're going to pass on some of that knowledge to help, guide the path of the city or the township or the state or the county. And what we have when we get people who are in power way too long is they begin to believe their own line of garbage, and they believe that they're a lot smarter because they've been elected so long. I've never been a huge fan of term limits, but God, we should be able to get people who could get these people out of office, because I think our problems are a direct result of people like not just Gary Walker, but Jerry Corkin and Paul Arsenault, people who've been there for decades in the same positions of authority, and they are allowed to do a lot of harm because of that longevity.
Well, I think that there's a duty by the county commissioners to look at what's happening in the county and assess it. But I think you get a lot of county commissioners that just go with the status quo. They look at, hey, we hire administrators, and the administrators run the county, and we just sit back and kind of meet and oversee it, I guess. But county commissioners should be stepping in once in a while and saying, no, we don't like what's going on. We don't like retiree hire. We don't like maybe something in the budget. And I know Commissioner Quayle certainly has issues with our budget. And I think he should have issues with our budget, because I think that it's our duty as county commissioners to look at everything in county government and not just sit back and say, we hire the administrators, let them run it. And you have some county commissioners that do that, and that's what happens over time. Because we're not, in a lot of committees, you get people that come and all they want to do is sit around and drink coffee and say, yeah, that's the way it is. But I think that it's time that you get the right people in the right positions. And what's happening is we're going to take a step backwards with this whole thing with the way Gary Walker manipulated the county districts and that. We're going to go backwards instead of forward here.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. I want you to hang on because actually you just mentioned it. Mike Quayle's actually on the line. So we'll be able to kind of chat with you two as we get to the end of the show. Hang on, folks. We'll be right back.
You're listening to In the Right Mind, online at WKQSFM.com and on air at Sunny 101.9 WKQS and 98.3 RUP. We'll be right back.
All right, folks, Dan Adamini here, tuned into In the Right Mind, and this has been one amazing, fast-moving show. And we were at the moment, we heard from Congressman Benishek, we heard from Senate candidate Pete Hoekstra, we heard from Tobin Ryan, brother of Paul Ryan, running for vice president. We've been talking with Bill Nordin, county commissioner, who is not running this time because of the redistricting, and he's supporting Deb Pello, who he would have been running against. But actually, just in our closing comments last segment, you mentioned Mike Quayle and the issues with the county budget. And lo and behold, Mike Quayle is on the line. So we're going to put you into the board, Mike, and you're going to be able to talk with all three of us. I just want you to know that we've only got a few minutes, so if you have more than one topic you want to address, we've got to keep our answers pretty short. So how are we doing this morning?
Very good, Dan. I am going to keep this very short. I really give a lot of credit for Bill coming forth with all this information. This has been going on for years with Mr. Walker and controlling what has gone on in Marquette County for years and years. I think the prime example was his union negotiations. It was always kind of an inside joke that when you were negotiating a contract, if you could find out what Mr. Walker wanted to get after the unions received it, you were pretty much good to go. And that happened with the retiree hire. He was the second one that signed up for it. So it's pretty obvious what he's been doing through the years, and he feathered his own bed. And I really appreciate Bill coming on, laying all this out on the line. It takes a lot of courage, because in Marquette County, when you speak out like this, and that there's a lot of retribution for it. And that's what we've seen in redistricting.
Yeah, there's a
so
lot.
Thanks, Bill, for doing your duty there. Thank you.
Well, I did have some retribution tonight.
Yes, you did. And I think we all have. And the ones that got the biggest retribution was the citizens of Marquette County with this redistricting. That was a big final blow that he walked out the door with. And I'm glad you addressed that, too.
You know, I tell folks, and you wouldn't believe this, if this was a soap opera or a show, you would not believe the insidious behavior that's gone on. You could not believe that, in real life any of this stuff could happen, yet we're living it here in Marquette County. And talk about not being Mayberry anymore, we're actually more like, we're more like Dallas, I guess.
Chicago, whatever. And that's what I continually tell people through my contact with them is that stuff like this shouldn't be happening in a small community like Marquette County. You can maybe expect it, not like it, but expect it in large cities like Chicago, Detroit, Washington, whatever. This should not be happening.
And, Mike, I believe that people don't realize it's happening because I talk to people, and I think most people are very similar to our beliefs, and they don't like our government being manipulated and the way that process works. And we hear about it in other places, but we don't want it here in Marquette County. And I think the reason it continues to happen is that people don't realize it's happening, and they don't do anything about it. And I think that needs to change. I think you need to get the right commissioners. Obviously, I'm leaving. I'm glad to be leaving because I think it's an ugly situation. But I feel bad for the taxpayers of Marquette County because they continue to pay the bill for this various types of manipulation that go on, and you know what I'm talking about.
And I do want people up there to realize that, there was a vote earlier this year, and, I have a lot of respect for the people who made the vote, but to eliminate the health benefits for the commissioners, because as we've talked about earlier, there are part-time people and full-time people in the county that aren't getting health benefits, yet the commissioners voted themselves. And the only three people who voted to eliminate these benefits are, Mike Quayle, who's on the phone with us, Bill Nordin, who's in the studio, and Deb Pello. So I hope you remember that when you go to vote, that if you think that the county's been wasting too much money, Deb Pello and Mike Quayle are two of the people who wanted to eliminate some of that waste, and were shot down by some of the other commissioners.
Dan, if I could interject too, I really appreciate you having us on this show because it's very hard. You talk about people not knowing. It's very hard to have your voice heard in this county. And so I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you for doing the show and having us on.
Hey, and thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. Bill, anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
Well, I'd just like to say that people need to support the right people here. Debbie Pello has done a great job. She's brought about the changes that we have been able to do in the last couple of years, so I hope people support her. And in addition, I hope people support George Hyde. It shouldn't even be a contest. I mean, he's the only guy with the experience. I don't even understand how this has come about. But, again, it's politics, and it's the political pulling of political strings.
All right, so remember to get out and vote Tuesday, and let's only have the live people voting up here. And I'm going to close with a song that I just wrote, and hopefully this is the only time we ever have to play it, because this is what the world might be like if President Obama is reelected. Imagine. See you next week, folks.